I'll call this meeting to order. It is Wednesday, October 2nd, 2024, and it's 10 a.m. We're here to discuss air quality standards with DEQ. If you guys would like to introduce yourselves.
Yeah, Dan McCracken, I'm the Regional Administrator for DEQ in Coeur d'Alene.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Sean Sweetapple. I'm the Air Quality Manager for DEQ in Coeur d'Alene.
Okay.
Good morning, I'm Emily Flores. I'm the new airshed coordinator, recently taking over for Dan Smith.
Okay.
Excuse me.
I'm Jeff Zimmerman. I'm the Pro Tem Chair today.
I'm Tracy Cassidy, Commissioner for District 1.
Okay.
And Sydney. And then we might as well do the public.
I'm Josh.
Josh, lovely to see you.
Yeah. Okay.
Hi.
Lovely to see you. Wanted to give just kind of, I'll give a quick overview of why we wanted to get together. Recently, in February this year, EPA put forth new criteria for particulate matter 2.5, so it's kind of your fine particulate matter. The previous criteria was 12 micrograms per cubic meter, and the new criteria is 9 micrograms per cubic meter. We've historically had problems with particulate matter, usually from smoke in the Silver Valley, and that's what prompted the wood stove changeout program that we used to have the last time we were basically in non-attainment with that 12 microgram standard. Those were successful in getting us below that 12 microgram standard, and we're actually currently meeting that 9 microgram standard, but the way that the criteria are evaluated, whether a community is in attainment or non-attainment, have to do with multiple years of data kind of combined together. And we are currently like right on the line, just barely meeting that 9 microgram standard. And so want to basically work with the county on some education and outreach, things that we can do. So basically to try and be on our best behavior to keep us under that 9 microgram standard, to avoid going into non-attainment and then having kind of that whole process of being in non-attainment and then having to work to make improvements. Because we've already done some of the low-hanging fruit, like changing out wood stoves, we have the air curtain incinerator we're able to get put in. Some of the next steps would likely be more regulatory, which are, there's downsides to that for the community. So wanted just to talk a little bit about that and coordinate.
I got a question. Now, when you're talking about the 9, we're down to 9 grams per cubic liter, how do you factor in our forest fires, and how do you factor in the chance that we burn? We have controlled burns, and one of the problems that I see is we're looking at the public to stop heating their homes, to start changing their heating patterns of their homes, but yet we have the Forest Service and the other agencies doing controlled burns, and then we do have forest fires. And so I see a problem with that, a big problem.
Yeah. So I'll let Sean explain how. So that actually, the forest fires actually, from a evaluating it for an attainment, those actually help us because we get to subtract those out. But I'll let Sean kind of explain how that.
Yeah. Well, another reason we wanted to come up and meet with you. We weren't sure. Well, we hadn't had a chance yet to meet you guys, and that. Just not knowing how much you know of the background of what's, I assume you guys have lived in Pinehurst and have been through the last several years of us having the targeted airshed grant and having the wood stove change outs and trying to do our education program to get everything back into attainment. So I just kind of wanted to give you a quick education on what all of this micrograms per liter and all of these things mean. So I got a little handout. Hopefully will help make sense on some of that. And I'll get to the forest fires in a second.
Okay.
So let's see. You want to?
Sure. Thank you.
We'll go all the way around.
Did you want one for the public?
Oh yeah, I made enough. I knew you'd want one.
Thank you, sir.
One for you.
Thank you, Sean.
Yes. So particulates are one of the national ambient air quality standards, which government loves acronyms. So NAAQS and AAQS. So they're 7 of them. There's 2 kinds of particulate matter, fine and coarse, PM2.5 and PM10, and then there's ozone, NOx, NO, compounds of nitrogen, compounds of sulfur, CO, which is carbon monoxide, and lead. Lead's kind of fallen off the table because after they did away with leaded gas, lead concentrations went down immensely everywhere, but they're still following the rest. The issue up here is, of course, the PM2.5, which is the finest, the particulate matter that we measure. The problem with it is it can cause health issues directly. It can go when you breathe it in. Our systems with PM10, you're actually able to catch it and cough it back out. The PM2.5, it just goes in, and some of the constituents of the PM2.5 can go directly into the bloodstream. So it causes more immediate problems. We've had the issue up here for years. As Dan said, we came back into attainment after working with the Targeted Airshed Grant. And then they go and change the standard on this. So that's this red line here kind of shows the standard as it was at 12, and then it's dropping down to 9. It's showing the years here. The way that they determine if you're in or out of attainment, it's a 3-year average. So that's why we've got 21, 22, 23. And just showing what our concentrations are across the board there. And that's called, that 3-year average is called the design value. So the design value is our key for meeting that 9 microgram level. Currently, I was showing with the blue line and the orange lines where we currently stand. And this EEs are called exceptional events. And that's where the forest fires come in. So exceptional events are things that impact our airshed and that are not man-made or man-caused. So if you flip this over real quick, on the back here it shows the last 3 years worth of data and then into 2024. So as you see in 21, 22, and 23, there's a lot of these really high spikes. That's in the middle of the year. Those are definitely forest fires. So when it comes to a forest fire, we just have to, when we send our data in, we include some information to ask the EPA to let us not count that day and count it as an exceptional event of something beyond our control. So we get to pull those out before we do the average. And then when you go into the winter, you see we're still having spikes up above that red line, which is the 9. And those are things that are man-caused. So it's, for whatever reason, home heating, we have inversions because we're in a valley. Those are harder to deal with. Because since it's man-made, we don't get to write those off. The prescribed fire comes in. You can do a prescribed fire as an exceptional event if they lose control of it. If it's what they were planning on doing, if it's whatever the area they were planning on doing, we don't get to write that off. Things that are changing a little bit recently too is we're working more with the IDL to start with and the Forest Service to have a little more input on how they're doing when and how they're doing their prescribed burning. We've always been able to make recommendations, and IDL was better about it, and the Forest Service kind of went their own way. But we're kind of trying to get to the point where we're working together better and they're listening to us more. So we understand that it's an issue. Unfortunately, the way the rules are set up, we can't write them off as exceptional events, so we're really trying to work with them to allow us to do a better job of burning on the right days when it's not going to hit town, when it's just going to get up and go away or go away from town. So I understand your concern. I've heard this before. In the past, people thought the same thing. Forest Service is out there burning, and you're telling me I can't burn my wood stove. That's
Especially nowadays that everyone's going to cut costs wherever they can. If that burning that wood's going to help them, then
exactly.
it's going to be a fight.
So part of what we're here today, we wanted to express to you what our ideas are. Well, let me finish talking about the max here first. So part of why we're here today is Dan was saying that we're pretty close to this 9.0 or the 9 micrograms standard. Talk about being on the bubble. The way that we've figured out that the state office has been working, looking at all our data for the past 3 years, and taking out everything in the exceptional events that we think EPA is going to accept, the average comes out to 9.0. So that's what we're submitting to EPA and saying that 9.0 counts as in attainment. So we're going to submit 9.0 and that we're in attainment. And as long as the Forest Service agrees with all of the exceptional events that we've submitted, we're good. The problem is when they announced this year, they announced the rule this year, it doesn't actually kick in until 2025 because they take 2 years to assess all the data and all across the country and all the different places. So by 2025, we're going to have data for 2022, 23, and 24 be what the standard is based on instead of the 21, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Just the 3 years just keep moving up down the line. So far, 2024 has been a really good year. We're currently, our average for the year is 7.6, I believe, is what I calculated.
7.6.
7.5. 7.5 is what it is so far for this year. The issue is that the fourth quarter of the year, so the last 3 months of the year, are historically our worst quarter every year. That's also on the back here. I just have the fourth quarters for the last back through 2020. So doing the math, if we could keep our fourth quarter average to 14.2, we'll be right at that 9.0 for 2024. Again, that design average. So that's why we're here to talk with you guys and let you know that we have some plans. We're trying to do education and all the things that we can do to try to help keep everybody doing the right thing, like Dan said, to keep us down below that so we don't break that standard. Because if you break the standard, then you go into non-attainment, and then EPA gets a lot more involved in paying attention to where our standards are, and then you're required to make efforts to get back under that level and into attainment. As Dan said, we did a lot of the low-lying fruit since we already had that target airshed grant with the $2.5 million. We did the easier things, quote unquote. So if we have to do it again, it's going to get a little more complicated. And one of the big things that EPA has been pushing in the recent years is local ordinances to help get people to help keep us below those levels for attainment. Those usually mean ordinance is on open burning, which we're already dealing with that with the ACI at the transfer station a little bit, and that's something we'll talk to a little more here about. The other ordinances they really push are for voluntary curtailment. So if the AQI, which is the colored system for rating the air quality, you're familiar with. Yes, sir. Yeah. So usually once it gets up past the yellow into the orange is when ordinances usually start kicking in. So then currently we ask people when we put out our forecast to, if they can, not to use their heat if the concentrations are bad. But it's purely voluntary. If we go into a non-attainment, EPA could push to where we be trying to get the communities to do ordinances that are not voluntary, saying if you're above such and such level on the AQI, to not use your wood stove unless it's your sole heating source. That's how the ordinances are usually written. We'd really like to not go there because you guys don't want to do that. We don't want to try to be the ones trying to talk you into doing that. So that's why we're here, kind of to let you know where we stand right now and what our efforts are kind of think we should try to do between now and the end of the year to keep us in line.
Yeah, I know this year we have quite a few prescribed burns with the Forest Service and the state, and I think it's gonna start increasing because what we're trying to do is we're doing a lot of fire mitigation. And that's an important role of fire mitigation. And we're gonna do the I-90 corridor, which we're gonna have a lot of slash piles that we're gonna have to burn. So I wish the EPA would look at that more as we're, trying to keep our communities from burning up in order to.
Yeah, we've got two very important issues, which are kind of bumping heads a little bit here.
On note with the construction on the interstate, I went to the DOT meeting later last month, and they were talking about maybe getting a wood chipper, which would actually really help because you wouldn't have to burn that waste. You could just chip it and use it as mulch or water mitigation. So by using that waste in a different way, you can actually take down the particulates entering the air as well. So that is another thing that is happening like behind the scenes.
And that helps if you guys bring that up too, whenever you're talking to them.
Okay.
On a majority of the state highway projects across the state, they have shifted to chipping because of these issues. And I know when they did the Kingston interchange down there, they started out burning, they started out burning, and I went over and was talking to the folks, and they got their manual out, and it actually says in their manual that they're supposed to assess and look at chipping before they do burning. And there was no reason they couldn't do chipping because they were actually hauling it up into the pine pit and burning it from that job, which was completely backwards. They're bringing it into the non-attainment area and burning it instead of burning it out there on site. So I taught for that one. I walked into the middle of it and got them to stop burning in the pine pit, and then they were hauling it off somewhere else and chipping it, I believe, in the end. But so I think as long as they're aware that it's a big issue here and we can talk to them, they seem to be open to doing other kinds of.
It's definitely in the conversation.
Yeah, maybe through more education of our state and possibly federal.
Yeah,
So we can have.
And the prescribed burning, there's a lot of different groups working together and watching weather patterns to make sure that smoke, like Sean said, is getting up and out. I don't know if you guys saw the one last Wednesday, there was a prescribed burn just south of Pinehurst, and there's that huge plume coming up. You could see it all the way from Cataldo. That smoke went straight up and like right over the area where nobody's living, like towards Montana. So that is a really good example of where that prescribed burning is working, and our practices are actually improving to help the communities that are living down in the valley.
Yeah, there's an airshed group based in Montana that makes recommendations to a lot of the bigger burners, and I believe they have 2 meteorologists working now to try to work with them to let them figure out where the smoke's going to go.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's up and out. If that's not if that's not going to happen, at least send it away from. Do it on a day where it'll send it away from the sensitive population. And we have 3 meteorologists down in the state office. Plus we're amateurs meteorologists. So we also look at things too, and then we get to make the recommendations, like I said.
That's good to know. Thank you.
The ones we can't really control are the small guys, like somebody who's doing logging on their personal property. They're not a part of a group, but that's where we can have some influence if we're asking people to take to the air curtain incinerator or watching for good air days themselves or calling us.
Yeah, we're calling it. We're literally in the midst of working with IDL to develop a unified smoke management plan between IDL and DEQ. We've always been separate and didn't really work with each other. It wasn't really through any changes in the regulations. It's just with all of the forest fire issues and needing to clean up and all the IDL and everybody's going to ramp up the prescribed burning. We just realized that we really need to get the smoke management under control.
Okay.
So hopefully within the next year it'll come out more in the public and be announced as we develop this joint program. And there's going to be more, I hate to use the word control, but even the smaller guys are going to have more things that they need to do. Like when they get their permit to burn, they're actually going to get a smoke management plan. Either they have to develop one or they'll get one issued from either IDL or the Forest Service or us. That's just kind of a stock one that at least tells them the best management practices for burning. So at least they know what they need to do. And it also tells them that, hey, call us. We've got our folks every day that we can call down the meteorologist and say, hey, right here on the map, what if we did a burn today? Maybe they should wait 3 days.
Okay.
Or maybe they do it
Or
today.
after 11, or.
Yeah, after don't start till after 11. So these are the things, they're in the works. They're kind of all coming together here soon. So hopefully that helps alleviate a little of your concern.
Yeah. Now, just a quick question. I know you guys helped out on the air burner.
Mhm.
Would you guys be willing to help out on like a chipper or something like that? We do have fire mitigation for our county,
Mhm.
and they're having to burn in the off season, in the middle of the winter, which is, that's when everybody else burns.
Right.
So they're having to wait. Is there something, to mitigate that with?
That's one of the things going forward is, we had that $2.5 million for the grant. That's finished.
Okay.
So we don't have that money anymore, but there are a lot of infrastructure grants out there available right now
Specifically for communities.
for communities. So what my hope is that we can be the ones to maybe find these grants and say, hey, Chicon County could benefit from this grant. Here's the things you can do with it. If you guys are interested, we'll help you write it. But you guys would be the recipient of the grant.
Okay.
We can even help, like if you want to do a wood stove change out or something, we could help you actually administer the money. But that's kind of it's a shift in, we applied for one big grant to try to help with smoke abatement issues, and it got shot down. The state didn't get one big for the whole state. So we're looking at it as that money's out there, it's available. You guys are communities and cities are able to apply for those grants. It doesn't have to be an agency, a state agency. So we have easy access to all of the grants that are out there. We just need to do the research and look through and see what we can find. If that all makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and again, the communication and cooperation.
Yes.
We have to work together, but we are more than willing to help where we can. I think I hit the basics of all of what EEs and all this stuff is. I can go into a lot more detail, but I think we probably don't want to know all about all of these things. The one other thing I did want to mention, just on this graph on the back again, we're looking at all those spikes that were wildfires. Look at 2024, is that last block down the end, the summer? There's not a single big old spike there. We didn't get hit hard by any forest fires this year. So we are very limited on the exceptional events we're going to be able to turn in this year. So that's why we're hoping that the things that we are going to suggest here will help keep us out, keep us below that 9, because we don't have a lot of wiggle room this year.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
Okay. I'm going to let Emily talk about what we're proposing on doing and hoping to get the blessing and things that we can help with.
So like Sean was talking about, we don't have a lot of exceptional events to cut out. So that means everything we do now is going to greatly affect how our design value looks for 2025. And as a community, I think we all need to be doing better about recognizing when there's good air days and when there's bad. Some of the ways that we've been discussing with the state office to try to help the community even recognize that air is a problem, because you don't usually even recognize it's a problem until you're choked out, right? Like, air quality's good in here until you start making bacon. But there is that sign outside of the clinic in Smelterville, and I'm sure you guys have seen it. It advertises for physical therapy, it advertises for burning clean, dry wood. And then I haven't actually noticed, I don't know if you guys noticed coming in, but it should also say, like, it's a good air day, and it'll be like a green thumbs up, or it'll say, like, moderate air day, and it'll be like a palm out with yellow or orange, depending on how good the air quality is. All of that data is coming directly from our monitoring station outside of Pinehurst Elementary. So that sign has a really good indicator for the local community of what your air quality is actually looking like right now. So if you notice that sign, or the community is noticing that sign is showing up yellow or orange, that would be a pretty good indicator that you don't want to be adding extra particulates into the air. So that would maybe be that voluntary curtailment that Sean was talking about, where instead of firing up your stove in the morning, you are turning on your heat split, or maybe just making your coffee a little hotter, or so that your fire isn't smoldering while you're at work and adding particulates to the air. That would be one way. So I guess in that way, it's just exercising good burning practices. We all grew up burning wood, and we all know what it looks like to have a good hot fire that doesn't put off that smoke. So just making sure that we're using those burning practices that we know are good, including burning dry wood, right? There is also the new air curtain incinerator that Sean was talking about. It's at the transfer station, and they use that, and it burns 90% or 80% of the particulates, and that way you're only getting that 20% into our air shed. That is super, super helpful. I actually saw a guy with his gator out there, and he's like taking load after load after load. So he doesn't have to burn it on his property and affect his neighbors, but he's also helping the community at large by allowing them to burn it instead. And we're going to talk with Richard about his burning practices as well to even get those lower yet, because they're using it properly, but maybe there could be better times to fire it up.
Okay.
So we're going to talk specifically with the transfer station. But as the IDO permits, I should say, open burning ends, closes on the 20th of October.
Yeah.
And
Don't
so,
need a permit anymore after the 20th.
yeah, from May until end of October, you require a permit in order to do open burning. So like that guy that's with his razor running all that stuff, he could get a permit and be burning that at home right now. Or he could wait until the 20th and light it up. But part of the fear there is that on the 21st, everybody lights their piles that they've been building all summer long. And in an ideal world, we would not be doing that and having every single pile lit up at once. So it's going to be a little bit of voluntary effort, and also being aware of what your neighbors are doing. Like if you see your neighbor is already out there lighting his pile, don't do yours today. I think that's an effort that we've been talking about with the state office, like how do we implement that? How do we implement making people aware that like my slash piles are affecting everyone and affecting the spikes on the data? But that's one thing to look at. Like those burning permits are free. And all they have to do is call the website or email the website or call the department. There's a station in Cataldo where they can go in and get the permit in person if they're more of an in-person type situation. But by spreading out those slash burnings, we can definitely help reduce spikes on the data.
So it's part of using our ability to advertise and outreach.
Yes.
That's what we want to do, is to do some kind of an education push.
Okay.
Using
Either
Facebook, like Facebook, and social media, those sorts of things. We have the ability to do these pushes where we're using a lot during the Target Airsharing grant, where we can send out information and just try to educate people, because I know there are people that, sorry, don't get me wrong.
No, you're fine.
People that just don't ever want to get a permit. It's like, yeah, it's free, but I have to register on the website. I'm not going to do it. So they wait till the 20th. And unfortunately, everybody gets that 20th date in their head. And then so on the 21st, everybody lights up. So if we can get some education out there and say, hey, yeah, you made it outside the permit time. If your neighbors are doing it today, maybe you can wait till next week. Or, maybe a better day when the weather's better. If you're not sure about the weather, give us a call.
Or your pile is smaller, so take it to the air curtain incinerator and let the big ones go afterwards.
Yeah, so those sorts of things are what we were hoping to kind of.
Now, do you have, with your meteorologists and things like that, can you project burn days that would be more sufficient, that would go up in the atmosphere instead of, do you have that on your website as well, the burn days?
It's not publicly advertised on the website, but
It is and it isn't.
subtly and not in so many words.
Yeah, it's advertised for today, but not into the future kind of thing.
And like, we have a crop residue burning program that more other counties use more so. And they specifically look at certain growers and they do that specifically for certain people. But here it wouldn't be as useful.
And we're hoping to use those folks more in the way where we can do it for certain people. It's like weather forecast. I mean, the weather forecast is the basis of where we start, and then make an air smoke forecast over top of it, the burning forecast. So what I'm saying is, it starts out as good as the weather forecast. So they tell you it's going to be sunny and great on Thursday next week, and then it gets to be Thursday and it's raining and there's snowing or whatever. So yes, we can forecast out the further out we get. Here again. So 2 to 3 days we feel pretty comfortable about.
And that information is on our app, on our website, on the fire and smoke map, on the EPA's fire and smoke map. So it's out there.
On our website, there's, I don't know if you've ever looked at it, but it has the AQI forecast at the top, and on the bottom there's some little flags that are open burning. Then we change the color of the flags for, maybe today's green, but in 2 days it's orange or red. For that's our suggestion for burning. Like, we know that day's not going to be a good day for burning. We're not saying that the AQI is going to be bad that day. We're saying it's going to be a bad day for burning. So that's kind of some education things we need to do.
Okay.
I don't think that's as clear as it could be on the information we have right now.
Yeah. It'd be nice to have is today a good day to burn?
Yeah,
Thumbs up, thumbs down.
thumbs down. Don't wait till tomorrow or Wednesday.
Yeah.
2 days out we'll do that. So
Surprised you don't have an app. Everyone's got an app for my
we have an
burnout.
app that has some of that information on it, and I don't know what we can.
Yeah, I think that's a really good
Suggest changes,
suggestion though,
Yeah.
to make it more clear on when is good to burn and maybe even forecasting when that might be.
This is it's a little bit embarrassing when we're talking about it as an agency. It's like it's not this is a surprise. This is happening today. We should have been coming up with maybe doing some more groundwork on this, but we've always been kind of reactionary in how DEQ has reacted to a lot of things. Well, we're trying to be more forward thinking and forecasting is part of that. So, and working with the Forest Service and all this stuff. So
I know a lot of people use this. You ever have the app Firewatch?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people I've heard, I started using it this year just to keep the forest fires. I mean, partnering with them or something like that, since they've already have that app out there might be.
Yeah, that EPA's fire and smoke map actually shows where the smoke plumes are too.
Okay.
You can see
that's a good one.
it'll show this gray cloud over the northern Idaho and Montana.
You can see
Or
when
blowing
we're getting
out
all
of
that smoke from or California or Canada, wherever. Yeah. That's a good one. It's just called the Fire and Smoke Map if you're interested.
And the app is good, and our app is Air Idaho, and that one's got some good information. That's a little more local.
Most of these apps are based on our
They
based
are.
on our
They're based
data,
on our data.
our data and our forecast too.
Okay.
That's good things to look at. Sorry.
We are going to try to get more information to the public. We were talking about getting a flyer out that we can put at the courthouse or the city halls and stuff. So it's hey, scan this QR code and get straight to the app. That way we're not having to tell every single person individually. You just see it there. We're also developing an article to put in the paper. We talked to you about that, Josh. It's in the works and hopefully it'll be approved soon and we can get that out. That way the public has an easy access. It's essentially saying what we've been talking about today. The NACS has changed. Let's make some changes. Let's continue this good movement as we go through winter and into the future because it's going to come up again. Air quality is always an issue. That sign outside of Smelterville is a good one to keep an eye on. The monitoring maps, and then there was one other one that we were going to talk about. I'm always available. Give me a call.
And we were talking about maybe in this. I mentioned it to Richard a little bit. Suggesting a cleanup weekend or something where just I don't know if the city or county could somehow facilitate people to get their stuff to the transfer station. Richard, he said he was going to try to be here today, but he didn't make it. He was telling me that he could handle a situation like that if there was a large.
It would be really nice
For a
to
weekend.
arrange roll-off trucks or something, like roll them into a community. I would guess that that's why a lot of people burn at home, is because they can't actually get their waste from home
Yeah.
to the transfer station. So if you throw a roll-off truck out there, everybody piles it in, you roll it off, and then it's out of your way.
We were
You don't
talking
have
about.
to burn it on site.
We even talked about talking to the service groups maybe and seeing if they could do a project. You know, if we can find
Would
out
pick
the,
up.
the elderly folks in
Yeah.
the neighborhood can, we'll take your stuff to the transfer station so you don't have to burn it or whatever. These are just ideas we've been throwing out to try to come up with ideas, because if we can, the standard changing is when the EPA asks all of the states to recommend or to refer their areas that should be in non-attainment. In between the times when they change the standard, the state has the ability to do it, but I don't, and maybe California has done it, but I don't know of any other states that have voluntarily put an area into non-attainment. So they're definitely looking at us this year. So this is why we're focusing on this so much for this fall.
It will really take the community's help. I don't think that DEQ coming in and being like, make sure you don't burn on a bad day is going to be helpful. It's going to take big effort from all of us
Yeah.
together.
That number I threw out that we were shooting for, the 14.2, I mean, that's kind of in the average of what those last 4 years have been. So if it's,
But last winter was pretty mild.
last
and
winters were pretty mild. So if we have a hard winter this year, we could be.
Well, yeah, and like I think there's kind of a base level of burning. The people that need to burn in their wood stove just to heat their house, that's going to happen, and it's more a function of how cold it is. And the idea is that if the people who don't need to do that can go a little, take a little bit of extra effort to, like, if you're just heating up the shop just because you're going to go work out there, but you don't really need to heat the shop, you're just doing it because it's convenient. If you can check on the app and say, today's not the best day to do that, or if you have a slash pile that and the difference between taking that to the transfer station or lighting it up out on your property, those are the people that we're trying to really get to on, like, hey, if you are willing to take a little bit of extra effort and try to help with this, then that will help us where we're not having the people just burning their wood stove to try and keep warm. We're trying to not have to impact any of that.
Yeah, everything we're suggesting for this fall is voluntary. And we just wanted to let you guys know, and like I said, maybe get your blessing that we're going to be making this effort. We didn't want to step on your toes.
I would be, I think we're fine with public outreach, just to, communicate with the public and educate. It's
And if, again, like Emily said, if you all ever have any questions about things or have ideas that we haven't thought of how to reach folks, but hopefully you're comfortable enough to give us a call and let us know.
what you're thinking. Maybe we can meet quarterly, if you guys would like
Sure,
to come to the commission quarterly, or
Giveaway.
Yeah, when the target airshed grant was going on, we were involved with the county commission quite a bit. I don't know if you ever met Dan Smith, but he had his office up here at the Kellogg office, and he was administrating that grant. He was talking to the Fitzgerald and Jay Huber and those guys all the time. Since the grant finished, we were kind of busy writing up the reports and everything for the grant, and got looking at other areas, and we just haven't interfaced with you guys like we should be doing, I think. So I would really like to be maybe on a regular basis just talking, since we know it's an issue here.
okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any other further questions,
No.
Commissioner Cassidy? You guys have any further?
That's us. I don't think so.
No.
Dan might pitch for the other. We're just air quality.
Okay.
So if something about the wastewater treatment plant or anything, don't call us. We will send you. Well, you can call us, but yeah, we'll call you somebody else.
I'll open it up to the public. You got any questions, Josh? Start with you.
So if you guys do have to go, if we do go into non-attainment and an ordinance is put out there, who enforces that?
It's the community. It's going to be up to the community.
Gotcha.
So I would say, so there's a lot of what, if this, if that, in that scenario. So I would say, If we go into non-attainment, then we are compelled to then do something to try and improve air quality. Because we've already done the targeted airshed grant, for the most part, we've changed out, the old wood stoves that were out there available, where people were willing to change those out. We did the air current incinerator. There are some other ideas that have been floated that we could do. What we don't know today what funding would be available to us. The biggest concern is that we go into non-attainment and there are no funds available to help us.
Right.
I mean, conceivably, if there were funding available, maybe there'd be some great stuff we could do to help get back into attainment if we went into non-attainment again. The biggest concern is we go into non-attainment, there's no funds available to help us, and the next tool that we have is a regulatory tool, which we did not have to go there under the last cycle to get back into attainment. If we did have to go that route, it would be, I think we would seek to craft something that was a local ordinance that would be easy to implement, and not, some huge regulatory burden on the community. But the problem is when we get into non-attainment and we're trying to meet a federal standard, I think we all have lots of good ideas of how the federal government could do things better and that would make more sense, but sometimes we're stuck with what the rules are.
Right.
And sometimes they tell us you need to do it this way. So that we're just trying to avoid that situation if we can.
Right.
And we've been in attainment since
Correct.
17.
2017. I think it was
official.
Yeah, 20, I can't remember.
Oh, wait,
They were
wait,
right
no, it
together.
was 17. No, it
It
was,
was more recently than that.
Did we go out of attainment and then?
no.
Well,
it's-
Well, we were in non-attainment, and that's when we got the targeted
Yes,
airshed
that
grant.
started in 2015. So, I think we actually officially got back into attainment at the end of 21.
Yeah, when they accepted the maintenance.
Yeah, the maintenance plan. So we're currently under what's called a maintenance plan, the 10-year maintenance plan. That we're doing the things that we said we'd do to stay in attainment, and then they wouldn't change the standard hours. So that's why I got complicated. The stick and the ordinances and all these other things that we do. If you break the standard and you go non-attainment, the only stick EPA really has is they have the ability to withhold any federal funds. So infrastructure funds are usually the roads
can
are
get
what
impacted.
they
Yeah.
usually threaten with. I'm not aware of instances where it's actually happened, but that's their stick that they wave at us.
Yeah.
So
We just fixed all our roads, right? So we should be fine for. At least that's what the cone said.
The other thing that, it's hard to project what could potentially be impacted, but like permitting activities, if you're in non-attainment, it just becomes more difficult to permit new activities.
Sure.
that
like
would-
Bunker Hill right now.
Yeah.
If it was non-attainment, it'd be a little more onerous for them to actually get the air permit that they're after. So that's
But another
Another
kind
way
of
to
bad
think of-
outcome that we don't want to.
another way to think about it. We just want to stay away from that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Back when we went into non-attainment before, 14 I think it was that we found out about it, I was retained by the BOCC to look into all this. And after 3 years, I got down to the bottom of it, and I won't mention it here. We'll say we were put in PM10, non-attainment in 97 by operation of law, and in 2001, EPA said we were fine on PM10. DEQ did not do the PM10 until right before the 2.5, like 20 years. It took them 15 at least for the maintenance plan. But you need to know that the monitor is at the elementary school. And when it was 10, the area that went into non-attainment first was Pinehurst. And later they added Pine Creek without any good reason, but EPA said, well, if you want it, we'll do it. So we came into attainment, and then the PM 2.5, the area that DEQ selected the boundaries started in Kellogg and ended at conveniently the county line in the middle of an airshed. That should have been included, but they didn't want to get Kootenai County upset. I would assume that this time you would pretty much use the same boundaries, and it would not affect very much of the county boundaries. So I would like to know if you guys have gone to Pinehurst City Council, Kellogg City Council, Smelterville, those guys that would be in the non-attainment zone, and you would want the ordinances from them. The BLCC would not do an ordinance last time because most of the county was not going to be affected.
It was one of the rare instances that a non-attainment area came back into attainment and didn't have an ordinance. We kind of got away with that. They let us get away with that. Where do I start, Jan? Let's see. We have not approached any of the cities yet. We wanted to start with the county. We were working from the top down. The boundaries, when it went non-attainment, EPA came to us and said, where do you want the whole county to be non-attainment? We said we want Pinehurst to be non-attainment. They said this, that. So it went back and forth quite a bit before we ended up with the boundaries that we did have for the last one. If it did go non-attainment again, those boundaries would be a recommendation, but it's basically starting from scratch again. So
You might just recommend Pinehurst this time, like you did before.
I did potentially. Well, I don't know.
That probably wouldn't.
Realistically, no.
I think it's probably reasonable to assume that. So basically, EPA wouldn't approve it the way that we submitted it last time.
Okay.
And they wanted it to be the whole county. We pushed back on that, and we compromised on we would probably wind up in a similar compromise. I think it's
A similar compromise. And we've been talking internally and with the state office folks that we would actually recommend bigger a little bit.
I think to the
'cause
west would be nice.
we cut a few communities in half. And yeah, ending at the county line, that's just an arbitrary government line. That's not the airshed. So I think we were all in agreement that, yeah, we should probably make it a little bigger if we get there. The hope is we don't have to think about it.
Right. Do you have enough data for all of the exceptional events that you can wipe them all out? Like, do you have the aerial and all this, the whole list of things you have to have for all of them? Because I know before we didn't. Okay.
There are, because EPA, when you submit exceptional events, EPA only accepts them down to the point of you meeting the standard. So like before they accepted them down, enough of them that we got down to 12. There were still some out there that we suggested that they didn't approve because it didn't take that to get to the standard. Well, now the standard's lower, so we actually have to go back to 21, 22, and 23 and look at those ones that didn't get approved before and get those ones in our queue. So there, I don't remember what they told us how many they had proposed. I want to say it was 190 something exceptional events that they were proposing. Yes, to get us down to that 9.0 where we're on the bubble.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't think they could get. They're very skeptical that they can get one more to get us below. They're only going to take us down to 9 anyway, but there aren't any more available to get us lower.
Okay. The October 21st, when you're talking about the day after, those prescribed burns are mostly by logging companies that are in the Kootenai County part of the airshed and to the west of town, which is what affects our air. And so have you contacted the logging companies to talk to them about a more even distribution so they don't wipe us out?
Yeah, so on that note, the burning permits are for individuals as well. It's not just the logging companies. And like you said, they are like the largest impact because they're burning the most acreage and the most density of
And all at
waste,
once.
right?
And all at once.
But those logging companies that are large enough actually are part of groups, the MIAG group. I don't know if Sean said the actual
The
name.
Montana, Idaho airshed.
That is a
Those are the-
group of companies, and IDOL, us, all of us are working together to try to burn at the right times. So those largest impacts are actually being monitored. And so like just because you see the plume doesn't necessarily mean that it's affecting the monitor or the community like directly adjacent. So like that example I gave earlier, you saw that big plume as you're coming into town. That smoke did go up and out. It didn't actually hit our monitor at all. It didn't roll down the hill. It went up and out. So just because it's close doesn't mean it was actually a bad day or hurting the community.
And further to that, a name you might recognize, Mark Boyle, is the state airshed coordinator, or smoke
been
coordinator.
asking about the smoke management plan, that's on here. He's
That's
been
what I was
working
talking
on
about.
it for a decade now.
The interface between IDL and us, that's the upshot of the smoke management plan. The state's supposed to have a smoke management plan. It's been in our rules forever, and we've never gotten one written. This is Mark Boyle, who used to have my position. He's been his job for the last almost decade to work on that, and they're to the point where they're hopefully going public next year with IDL, and he's working on the Forest Service. He also interfaces a lot with the smaller loggers, and that I can't remember the name. There's a couple of the groups of the smaller loggers have their own.
Yeah, it's like a lobbying commission.
It's like the independent loggers
Yeah.
group. He's been talking to them a lot.
Kinky and.
Sean
little guy.
Kehoe and some of those folks, because they're the next step. We started with IDL and the Forest Service to try to get them in line, and then the next step is going down to work on regulating the smaller folks. Part of the issue is we've got 2 compliance people, essentially not even 2 complete compliance people for our 5 counties, and if all of a sudden we have 200 small loggers that we're suddenly supposed to be paying attention to, it's kind of tough. But
Spread wolf.
yeah, but that's where the rule's going. So
And so the smoke management plan, I asked him where it was because IDAPA didn't have one.
hijacking in a little different direction here.
IDAPA said we had to have one and there wasn't one on a PRR. But they started it, and the reason I asked was because the EPA and the Federal Reserve says that with prescribed burns, that you can use prescribed burns sometimes, but mostly if the EPA has a state-approved smoke management plan. And so they didn't have that, and Director Tippett's got that in motion, and Mark's had a whole bunch of issues with enviros and things like that.
False starts. We had several false starts.
Yeah, but that would be what, when the Forest Service does their prescribed burn, or Stinson, or whoever gets the big ones, that they have more opportunity to call them exceptional events.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're getting close to our hour to start on the next meeting.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes, go ahead.
This rule is so egregious that it was 12.0. EPA came back with, we don't need to change it at their 5-year review. Didn't need to change it. It was fine, everything. And then somebody sued them. And then in the end, EPA caved and dropped it down to 9 without any scientific evidence that I've seen to show that it was worthy, that it was more healthy for people and wildlife to drop it down 1/3 like that. And so the Senate is doing a Senate joint resolution right now to rescind this rule and put it back to 12. Then it will put it back to 12. It's not looking good right now. It's not even got to committee yet. And it has to go to committee and then to the Senate and then to the House committee, the House, and then get signed. So they may bring it back up at the next section, but section.
I was just going to say that when they changed the rule, we have a year to respond with our recommendations for non-payment area. So we have until February. So this is why we're doing this push, because regardless of what the outcome of this,
We got to.
be prepared for it to stay the same.
Exactly.
If it doesn't stay the same and it goes back to 12, it's actually easier for us. They were initially recommended to going down to 8. If they've gone down to 8, 75% of the country would have been in non-attainment. I mean,
Yeah.
that's getting ridiculously low. So
Yeah. And the a part of our kind of calculus on all this is the stuff we're talking about doing right now, where it's just asking people to, hey, pay attention to the weather and the report on if it's a good day to burn. That's a good thing to do anyway. Whether the number is 12 or 9, like there's really no harm in recommending people do that because it's a good thing to do anyway, just to avoid smoking at your neighbors. So
and it's kind of an angle we might take too. Is just to remember your neighbors, think about your neighbors when you're doing these
And the
things.
sad part is there's only 6 core stations in the state of Idaho. And wherever those 6 are, that's the ones that can go into non-attainment. If you're not in the so we're being discriminated against in some manner.
If we had the money, we could put but
Yeah.
it's a. If we had more money, we put more monitors. I don't know.
Well, I thank you guys for coming in and
Yeah.
appreciate your time.
We
And thank
throw
you for
on
the
it.
public and the
Yes.
paper. And
We throw a lot at you, so like I said,
sure. You have any other questions, Commissioner
I
Cassidy?
don't.
all right.
We got our next meeting.
All right.
Here's
Good to
the-
meet you.
Thank you.